Luke Timm is a guy who I feel like I could have grown up with, and he's a guy that I liked instantly. He went to Princeton. He went there to play football. He didn't play football because he was addicted to alcohol and drugs. He ended up getting arrested. His name and picture were splashed all over newspapers in the Northeast, and he became that guy that was what happened to Luke. I'll tell you what happened to Luke. He got sober more than 4 years ago, and he is touching lives. I'll let him tell you. He can do it a lot better than me. But Touch Streets is a group that he is in the process of finishing off the preparation, and they are going to hit the streets of New York City. I talked to him in his office in New York on 42nd and Lex. By the way, the guy is only, or 42nd and Park, excuse me. The guy's only 24 years old, and he's got it going on, and he's sober, and he's carrying a great message. So without further ado, Luke Timm. But first, Kevin Souza. Sobriety. So first I want to ask you, we'll go through your story. I want to talk about what you're doing today, your coaching, all that stuff, your office, what you have going on professionally. But I want to talk about your history, alcohol and drugs, because you certainly have one. And there's a lot of dudes your age that get sober, and I think they feel like they can't connect with people that are their age. And I think that's why what you're doing and being out there is just so important. So, and you've been sober since 2018?
Yes, correct.
What's your sobriety date?
4/21/18. So the day after 4/20, if you could get a hint on that one.
So
it was like I had like 4 or 5 days, and then I was like, all right, push that off to 4/21.
So were you? What was your drug of choice, as they say, for lack of a better term?
I would honestly say weed.
Okay.
Weed was probably my. It was the one I couldn't kick at the end. Like it was funny because it's like everybody's like, oh, weed's harmless, because like the physical ramifications of it aren't that bad.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, I'm like, that's why it's the most dangerous. It's because you tell yourself it's not that bad. So the psychology behind it is like, oh, it's not that bad. I can do it. And it's like to get yourself to quit, it's a lot harder because you don't have as much motivation. You don't, unless you really can ingrain those beliefs that like, okay, this is actually dangerous for my mental well-being, my motivation, my productivity. For most people, if people just like to chill out and like don't really have a plan for their life, it's like, oh, what's the problem? Like I just work and I sit back on the couch after a long night and smoke. But it's like, okay, it depends on what you want in life,
Well, you talk about it too. It's kind of like it's hard to have that like marijuana bottom, I would imagine, right? But it slowly is just kind of chipping away. If that's your thing, if that's all you do, because I know that I smoked weed when I would smoke around the clock. It was like, you get that idea where you start, like you said, you lie to yourself like, oh, I can do this. There's nothing I can't do. Well, hi.
100%. Exactly. And I mean, obviously I got into all sorts of trouble with drinking and Coke. I was using acid a pretty good amount. So yeah, there was a lot of other shit I was doing, but at the end of the day, when I got kicked out of school, they sent me home for the year. It wasn't like I was going home and railing down lines. You know what I mean? It was more like, okay, smoking, hanging out with those same people, and then I would try to quit, and then it would just be that same cycle. I don't really remember there being any incidences with alcohol in that time period. I think maybe just because the environment wasn't that bad, but I never was like the alcoholic type that was like, I'm going to turn to my bedside and start drinking. It's once I start, I don't have an off button.
Yeah.
So that was that for me. And I think I just wasn't in those environments where I was, I don't really recall during that time period, but I was also probably high 99% of it. So,
so you grew
it
up.
was me. If it was like wake up, smoke.
Yeah. You were a wake and bake guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Even high school, my junior year, I probably wasn't wake and bake in junior year, but it was as soon as I got out of school, like smoke.
All right. Well,
senior year was wake and bake.
One of the things that's very interesting about this is you were an excellent athlete. I guess you grew up in Poughkeepsie, which people know, what's that, like an hour from New York?
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half train ride. Not bad.
And so you end up playing football. When did you start realizing you're 6'5", I'm 6'5", so there you go. Game recognizes game. I like that. I noticed. I was like, all right. And by the way, but I played football. I was a defensive end. I didn't have the skills. You were a wide receiver. What kind of receiver were you?
Yeah, I mean, they split me out wide, and it was kind of just like, go long, or I honestly, my skill set, people would be like, "Oh, were you fast?" I was like, "Yeah, I was fast. I definitely was fast. I had incredible hands." Not to gas myself up, I was
I
decently
asked,
quick.
dude.
So, yeah, I mean, it all worked out, and it's like I was doing all that stuff and still having success on the field. So I was like, why stop? I could do
Yeah,
anything.
totally. So you grow up and you start. Back to my initial question: when did you get the itch and you realized that?
So I started drinking when I was 12.
Okay.
It was kind of just like, I remember it was a pretty traumatic moment in my life, which I feel like I still haven't like addressed with the people that were involved. Like the parties don't really know, but
Is that
um,
something you can share?
I
Or?
not really.
I got you.
I don't totally feel comfortable sharing it just because it's just like people I know. It's just keeping.
It's almost like when you write a
Um,
book. It's like, okay, you're going to write the book, and then it's like, oh well, I got to talk about other people were involved in a lot of these instances. I struggle with that too.
yeah,
Like when I'm talking about stuff in public, there's certain places I can't go because I just, whether one, I totally haven't processed it yet. I'm not a finished product, or two, that you don't want to bring other people in.
exactly. And it's like I don't want to bring them in, especially if I haven't brought it up to them either, because then it's kind of like oh, whoa, where did this come from? Like I
Yeah.
didn't, I don't even know if the person's aware of kind of how everything transpired affected me. But it's definitely was like, I think it's what led me kind of into starting that young. I think I would have had the gene either way. I don't know if I would have started that young, probably pushed me a little further along at a younger age. But I also look at that moment and I'm like, okay, now I know what I want to be in the future so that doesn't happen to like the generation that comes after me.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So you're 12 years old. You start to drink a little bit,
Yep.
and then how does that start? When's the first time you get drunk? Or first of all, let me backtrack a little bit. Any alcoholism in your family? Anybody
Oh
like?
yeah, big time.
Oh, for
Yeah,
real?
yeah, yeah. It's all
Okay.
over. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Give me the background on that. What's that look like?
I mean, it's just all sides, mom, dad. I don't want to shout people out, but it's all over the place. So I
Same
mean, it's
deal.
and it's a good amount of people. So it's not like, oh, this one person. It's a lot of people have those characteristics. So
Did you
yeah,
know when you
it's
started to
it's
drink when you were like 12, and were you like, oh man, this has affected me a little differently than my friends? Or when did it start to really work for you?
like work in the sense that I knew I liked it a lot, or
Yeah,
work in the
you
sense
started. For
like,
me, I always say I could talk to girls finally. That was a huge
yeah,
deal for me.
I think it was right off the bat. I mean, me and my friends had a good time. Like I would always go over to my friend's house on the weekends, and their parents we talk about it with their parents now. We're like, you guys were so oblivious. Like we would literally drink everything, pour water in there, and like no one ever knew. Everything would get restocked, and like we live pretty close to the city, so we like go out to the gas stations at night, doing manhunt, like going seeing chicks in the neighborhood, like whatever it was. And yeah, so like all that stuff was definitely fun, and I enjoyed, being the guy that was ahead of the curve. Like, oh, I've already got started drinking, and like people haven't really started doing that yet. So it was like it seemed cool in my eyes.
I always say that. Like I was looking back, right, getting sober. I was the guy, I was the guy on Wednesday figuring out how we were going to get drunk on Friday and Saturday. And then I
Literally.
realized that I could smoke pot during the day. And I was like,
Mm,
this is nuts. Now, a lot like you, dude, because I've heard you talk a little bit. I was a football guy. I got a scholarship. I
mm,
went to Richmond. I developed a heart problem. They kept me on scholarship, but I couldn't play. But a
mm,
lot of that shit I was doing a shitload of drugs in high school. I lost my way, and I have like a lot of regret around my career that I'm actually still
mm.
career. I say career around playing football. You know what I mean?
No,
Like we all have
100%.
those pipe dreams.
Yeah.
I wasn't put it this way.
There's people that have the regrets from middle school.
Yeah,
So
yeah, totally, yeah. And I look back and I'm like, here's the thing: I didn't get the most out of my ability, like nowhere near. And I
mm,
didn't have this incredible ability, but certainly people thought I could play. I liked it, And I would
I mean, you
rather,
bowled at Richmond, man. That's
yeah,
Division 1.
yeah, but I would rather drink and smoke than
Yeah.
do work out or do things that were productive. When did you notice that started to happen to you? You're playing football. I mean, I've seen stuff on your Instagram. You're having house parties as a sophomore. You're passing out. Like
Hmm.
at your own place.
Yeah.
When did it start to get in the way of your production?
I mean, I think it started to like, I mean, I saw it grades wise, probably a little bit in my 8th grade year because I was always a really bright student, like 96 average all across the board, 100 in math every single quarter, like really good student in math. And then I remember my grade dropped a little bit my 8th grade year, and I started drinking in my late 7th grade. So I'm guessing that started to move into there. And then high school, didn't care about school, just cheated to get by. Luckily, I was naturally smart, so I could kind of
You
make
got
things
you got in.
happen.
Let's
More,
not bury the lead. You got into Princeton.
yeah. I mean, on an 89 average, I think
Okay,
cumulative. I mean, my SAT was good. It was like 1900.
that's
I
good.
took a prep course and all. Like when it came down to it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this prep course and get the score I need to get because I wasn't there. But yeah, it was affecting my school. Did I really know? I don't know. I just felt like I just didn't care anymore. So I don't know if I really noticed it affecting anything. I was
Were
just like,
you
okay, this is
entitled
what I do.
being an athlete? Like
So it's funny. I didn't start off playing football until my sophomore year of high school. So I was actually a cross country runner, and I was top 5 in the country for um, freshman in cross country. So I ran like a sub 17 5K, 430 mile. I mean, I was literally like this thin. I was 95 pounds lighter than I am now. I was 6'3", 135, 6'3", 135 going into so 90 pounds going into my freshman year. And so I didn't really, I remember like stretching at the cross country, like where we would stretch and looking at the football field. And I'd be like, man, I would dream about Friday Night Lights. Like that's the funny part is so
yeah.
but I was always like a goofy guy and like outgoing, extroverted. So I feel like I was pretty popular up until that point. But I didn't always feel like I was like the man. Like I was like, oh man, I wish I could get there. I wish. And it's like sophomore year, I decided to start playing. And my buddy, who started as a freshman at quarterback, great football player, went to William and Mary.
Oh, all right.
So he was the quarterback, and I just was like, one day I was like, oh, let me just go throw routes with you guys, and like it came naturally because like I was a basketball player, so I was on varsity like my sophomore year, but I was always like a great runner, and I just think that's what I thought I was gonna do. But then I
Were people
started filling in
like
with it a
Luke?
little bit.
You're too exceptional at cross country. You can't.
Oh yeah, big time. People were like, you're screwing up your entire life, like scholarships, like you had all these big time opportunities, and now you're throwing it all away just to go play football. Yeah, I
Describe for
remember like
people what that's
family.
like. That like the dedication to cross country. Like how hard is that? I have no clue.
Oh, it's nuts. Like it's because you're really going out there every day and you're not. I mean, football. There's like some fun moments and like you can. It's like you're in team O, let's say, and you're running play after play, but there's like the mental aspect of like thinking where you have to be and like getting to catch the ball and like having big moments without like throughout practice of the games. But cross country, it's like you're just in your head the whole time. So it's like I feel like that those endurance sports are really like you really got to have that mental aspect and like I always had that, so it was never like, oh man, Luke's doing drugs and alcohol and he's lazy at practice. It was like, no, when you got me there, when coach got me on the field or wherever, on the court, I was the hardest worker out of anybody that was there. I mean, anybody can attest to that. Like that's what I was always known for. Was now the at my level, Division 1, you know, I wasn't doing nearly anything that other people were doing. Like people that came into Princeton, like these guys were played in Georgia, Florida, all these big states where they play football all year round. They're in the weight room. I never touched a weight. I touched a weight like 2 months out of the year. And then that was it. And then like summertime, I was like missing because I'd always just be out like whatever. And like,
Missing, yeah, like that.
so it was just like
That's a
my
great way
dad, I
to
remember my
describe
dad
it.
was,
I was missing.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I wasn't there like I should have been. Like spring, in this spring, I definitely was when I had a good grind going because I was at school, and so it
Mhm.
was like okay, I didn't have a sport, and there was no like running out of school to like get away from like the weight room or the field, and so that's when I would lift, and then after that, never lifted. So always go into this season as skinny as possible. Very little reps throwing, not nearly as much as it should have been. and just still ended up, everything
Everything was
better than
working
I
out
ever
for
could
you.
imagine. You know what I mean?
When did you, when you got aligned with football and the sport, did you start to party a little bit more? Like now you're part of a team, and it's not so much a knock on football because the camaraderie in the locker room is one of the best parts about it. But at the same time,
Hmm.
you guys on the team like to go hard, and if you like to go hard, you can certainly find your tribe within the locker room.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely enhanced it. Because I was always, I'm a very competitive person. It's something that, to the point where even now, so I'm like, okay, I gotta like work on like, I play pool in my basement with my cousin, and I expect to win like every game of pool, and I'm like, why isn't the ball going in? Like I should be making these shots, And it's like, okay, like just a game, calm down. So I took that into like every aspect of my life besides probably school, like
Yeah.
during that time period. And so when it came to partying, I was like, I want to be the one that drinks the most, who goes the craziest, who has all the attention. Like I constantly wanted everybody's attention. And I was an extrovert and natural entertainer. So like I got some of that, and I would feed into it even more so. So yeah, it was totally increased that, because that party going into my sophomore year, where bow and arrow got shot through my parents' window, like I got sneakers stolen, like my fridge door was removed, like there was food and stuff all over the ceiling. Like the ground was covered in beer cans. Like it was nuts. TV was like in the front lawn. Like all the screens were kicked in. Everything like mini Project X. Don't even remember a thing. And that was all to like impress, like, oh,
Yeah.
like my parents are away. Like let's have the whole team over. It was like all the older guys. They invited their friends.
Yeah.
I don't really remember any of it, but
Holy shit. So did the police come or anything?
I honestly don't think they came for that one. I lived down a cul-de-sac, and it wasn't like nobody lived near me, but I guess my neighbors didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I had other parties where the cops came when I was like a little older.
Where were your parents?
They were on vacation in Long Beach Island. So my grandma had a beach house when we were up until like 2 years ago. She actually just sold it, but that was like our vacation spot. If it wasn't for that, like my parents would never have done anything. They're very just like chill. Don't
That's my
they would
family was the
just
same way. We had my uncle had a place on Long Island, so we would
mm,
go there, and then we would go to Connecticut where my dad was from. And we were lucky. I was lucky to grow up where I grew up, but
mhm.
school was out when they went away. And as my brothers and I got older, the parties were just out of control. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it's so I can relate. Same type of background, same type of situation. When you got in trouble, what was your relationship like with your parents? Would they freak out? Were they hardcore?
Interesting. Yeah. So mom, super hardcore, even to this day. Um, like and obviously I'm not doing the stuff that I was doing before. So like our relationship is definitely, we have a very tight relationship now. But before, we butt heads every second of every day.
Because they know
And
what
yeah, we
you're
had
up
a
to.
little,
Moms know, dude,
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, and I was just stupid about it too. There was no like secretiveness in me. It was like, I'm blacking out and like, what can I do at that point? They're my ride, my parents are my ride. So it's like, what was I gonna do? Um, so yeah, that relationship wasn't great. But my dad was always, he was not strict at all. So he didn't care. And my parents are together too, because I always say that, and people are like, "Oh, like were your parents split?" I'm like, no, like they're just exact opposites when it came to like parenting style. So like it was like my mom was laying down the hammer, and then I'd be like, "Oh, screw you, mom," and then my dad like didn't care. So
Welcome to One Star Rewind, a new podcast about those dreaded one-star reviews that every business owner hates to receive, but yet every customer loves to read. During this podcast, we will peel back that one-star review to better understand how it happened, when it happened, and what the business owner is doing after receiving that one-star review. This podcast will be about love, hate, and laughter. On One Star Rewind, we will meet with real business owners who will tell their stories and how they do rely on reviews for their business. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or download us at roguemedianetwork.com. Please subscribe, but only rate and review for not a one-star review. Join us each time for a new review and a new story.
Bros and foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about bros and foes and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach,
And I'm Mike.
and we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, Foes, and Heroes. It's the two of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros Foes Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Bros and Foes and Heroes.
What are we doing here, Rusty? What are we going to do?
Yep, we're doing the King of the Hill Rewatch Podcast.
King of the Hill
Yes, sir.
Rewatch Podcast. Yeah, so we're going to go through one episode at a time. Come along for the ride with us.
Come check it out.
And give me a good like Dale Gribble quote to go out on. Wingo.
Yeah, Wingo.
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 All right. Well, join us for the King of the Hill Rewatch Podcast.
Deep in the heart of Texas, that drinks his brew.
911, what's your emergency?
Do you hear that? It's coming from the house.
It's coming from inside the house? Do you mean? Could it be?
The Poltergeist. New from Rogue Media. Two haunted hotties talking about haunted places. Every episode, we dive deep into the darkest places and give you a bit of history.
We're getting spooky in all the right places.
You've gobbled your last ghoul.
Follow along for the craziest and spookiest stories with Debbie's Dark Tourism. The Stanley Hotel,
Winchester House,
The Alamo,
Hotel Monte Vista,
and more spooky places. Find us at _Poltergals. POLTERGALS.
Look over your shoulder. It's us,
The Poltergals. Wherever you consume the podcast, you can find us there.
They ever
I
try
think
to
about-
put you into like any kind of treatment or rehab when you were younger? No.
No.
Okay, because
No,
you were
that
excelling.
Yeah, I mean, I was excelling on the field. My classroom work wasn't great. But yeah, I was excelling on the field. And I'm trying to think. I just got in trouble a lot, got stuff taken away, got in a lot of arguments, run away,
Run away. I
all that
love.
type of stuff.
What
like,
was your
just go stay
relationship
at somebody
like?
else's place.
Yeah, what was your relationship like with girls at this time? What are your relationships like?
So I mean, like, I had started having a girlfriend when I was going into my junior year, when I my sport. That's when junior year is like when football took off.
Yeah, you're getting
And that's when I
recruited.
got a name for myself, and that's, I had a girlfriend, so I was always there, like over there. Their house was like the party house. They had like their house, and then they had this barn behind their house that they actually renovated, and it's like insane. It was like in a magazine and stuff. Like, it's like, I can't even describe it.
My mind
But,
is
like, that's where everybody-
my mind is getting blown right now.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like,
like-
and so
like,
everybody
I'll
would
just-
go there.
Yeah, it's a cool spot. Like, like they had a pool table, 67 Corvette body. Like, it was just like, it was just cool stuff. And like, they're awesome people. Like, I haven't talked to them in a while because my ex and I haven't been together for 2 years. Great family, great girl. Like, I think the world of them. But yeah, I was always over there. And so my mom didn't like that either. She's like, why are you sleeping over? Blah, blah, blah. My mom's very like conservative.
Dude, that's what I would do
Christian,
too, because when I started to evolve as like an alcoholic, I realized that I could go other places and parents weren't as stringent as mine. I mean, I couldn't, because my mom knew the jig was kind of up when I was like a sophomore, junior in high school. I was drinking all the time. She was finding weed. I mean, I wasn't into hardcore drugs like yet, but it was like, this dude's got a problem. She knew alcoholism ran in my dad's side of the family. And I was away from home as much as I could. And my parents would freak out. They'd be like, "You're not sleeping over there." They were just worried and they didn't know how to handle it, you know? So and then I always had like, my dad was a badass. I mean, he was tough. And so I had like a fear of my parents in a way that like, I would be this big guy like staying out all night, but I was like terrified. My mom would be like, well, your father's gonna have his way with you when you get home, and I would be like, oh, my dad's dead, I'm still scared of him, you know what I mean? Like, God rest his soul.
That's how I see my mom, you know, like my mom's like the hammer, you know?
Totally. So
do whatever, you know?
Yeah. So I get that. Like this being away, being somewhere else where the rules are, you know, more relaxed, and that's alcoholic and addiction when you think about it. Like, I'm sure you're in love with the girl and it's fun over there, but like, why aren't you spending time? You know what I mean? Like, you know, like there's not, for me, there was not like, I was chasing freedom and whatever else, you know, away from home. When did you have your first big consequence because of alcohol and drugs? We talked about the party. What's after that?
Probably 13. I mean, probably had some before that.
What were some of the bigger ones?
I remember, bigger ones. I mean, like when I was 13, I remember like my friends and I got in trouble. Like I was the one that got in trouble with the police, but it was like, you know, we were so young, nothing ever happened of it. But house parties, I got in trouble with the cops my junior year, I think, or maybe maybe late junior year. Friend and I went and smoked weed, like boxed my car, like drove like 30 minutes and like I made a wrong turn. So I did a UE and the cop just came up on the overpass, got like 5 tickets. And I had like the Princeton offer since like my junior year. So that must have been my senior year. So I was like all worried about that. Like, didn't know what was going to happen. Were they going to find out? Luckily, that's
addiction,
table.
Dude. I got caught smoking weed going into my freshman year in college, and I was like, always like the other shoe's going to drop. They're going to find out. I'm going to get kicked out. I'm going to lose my scholarship. 100% with you. And it's like that's that whole thing, right? It's like you're constantly living like, are they going to find out, right?
Exactly. It's paranoid about something at 24/7, and then it was like the video that you probably saw was like the first time I like technically got arrested was at school. It was like me and a bunch of guys were smoking in my room during football camp, before freshman year even started. Cops came and like I had to take the fall and like, you know, got arrested, fingerprints, mugshot, all that. So that was my first time getting in trouble, and then my second arrest was going into my sophomore year, leaving a pregame, had an open container. Cops saw me. I was like the last one, so it was just me. And I had like a bag of Coke in my pocket, some weed rolled up, and I was like, I'm not about to get in trouble with them again. Like, you know, so I just took a step towards the cop and booked it, like just ran. Got away because I was fast, and then I went back out that same night. Instead of staying in, like I was like, no, I'm going back out.
Yeah.
And, like we went out to like called the street, and that's where all like everybody parties. And these places called eating clubs at Princeton.
By the way, you're 6'5" and you're a football player.
6'5", a football player, and I'm a toothpick at that time. And I'm actually wasn't a football player at the time because I quit right at the end of the summer of my freshman year because I like hurt my ankle. And I just use that as an excuse to say, okay, like, you know, maybe I should just work on my grades, right?
Yeah.
Work on my grades. You know, I ended up joining a frat and like getting involved in all this shit. And so then they got me that night when I was out.
They found you.
Yeah. So I got a bunch like resisting arrest too, like when they got me and all this stuff. So drug charges, resisting arrest. And that was when I got kicked out of school for a year and I had to like come back and prove myself. So luckily I got sober. You know, that year I had to take off and I got sober in April. So I got in trouble right before Halloween, got sober April 21st.
So you get sober in April. What do you do to get sober? How do you embrace recovery as a young dude? Because I know that like it's very easy to compare yourself out at that age.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what, I got to get sober. And I at that point I knew it was an issue. Like when I got in trouble, I didn't really want to do anything about it, but I was like, all right, let me get sober. Got sober for probably like 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden something like I had a wedding. I think it was my cousin's wedding. Ended up drinking a little bit, but got high. and then cycled. And then like, it was probably like a month on, a month off, you know, just kept going back and forth of getting sober for a little bit and then going back out. And then it was like, I ended up probably being out for like 2 months. At that point, I was a waiter at a local diner. You know, people would come in, they'd be like, "Oh, Luke, like, how are you?" You know, like,
Yeah,
and
like
at
you're that
point,
guy.
like, yeah, the story was on like the local news channels. Like, people said they were running ads on their Google, like, and people in my area, like, it'd be like, local star arrested at
Yeah, well, it's
Princeton, you know,
clickbait,
like,
dude. It's interesting.
clickbait 100%. I'm
Yeah.
sure they made some good money off that, so
Yeah.
I can't blame them. That's just good old capitalism.
Yeah.
And then where was I going with this?
So what were you doing? Like, you know, you're out for like, you know, before you kind of
Yeah.
finally eventually land.
Sorry, right. And then the
yeah.
last time where I was still like out and about, got kicked out of my house.
Your parents
for,
kicked you
like-
out.
Yeah, my mom kicked me
Yeah.
out for sure. Yeah. It was
What
definitely, like, a
happened? What'd you
very
get?
heated argument.
What'd you do?
I don't even. It was probably just doing the same shit. You know, my mom was like,
Yeah.
she's gonna like let you have it. Like, you know, so we probably got in a big screaming argument, like almost like a fight or whatever. And I was like, all right, I just walked out, stayed at my friends for like 3 weeks. And eventually, like, I actually got like, I left my job because I hurt my back and then I had no money. All this stuff, just like, I had no money. My friends didn't want me anymore. Like, I was staying up, bouncing around. And I was just like, all right, I'm sick and tired of this shit. So I was like, okay, like, I'm actually gonna like reach out to somebody and get help. That was really the turning point, was saying, okay, I need to lean on somebody else. And so my high school football coach, he, you know, says I can talk about this when necessary in the program. Reached out to him.
How awesome
and
is
I was
that?
like,
How did you know?
oh,
Not to go into this
amazing.
guy's background or say his name or anything, but how did you know
Yeah.
that he was sober?
I think through like family and stuff, like, you know, and he saw me develop throughout high school. So he was like, all right, this dude's definitely looking like he's on the right trajectory of being in the room soon.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so I knew of him and I was like, all right, like, let me just go ask him for some help. And I remember we went to the school, talked for like 2 hours that day, and I was like, yeah, like, could you sponsor me? And he was like, yeah, I'd love to. And the rest is history from that day. I probably had like a week of sobriety at that point, but that was like, didn't turn back.
Dude, describe, before we get into the recovery, that's an awesome story. Describe what it's like to be, you're the football star, you go to an Ivy League school. I would imagine people are around you constantly. People want to be around you. And then now you're that guy who's couch surfing, has no money. And for me, I remember that was a real kick in the nuts, dude, when my friends who I was like family with didn't want me around anymore. You know, like what was that emptiness like?
Like you're saying, people are surrounded by people constantly. I remember being like all over the state and other states. People would be like, "Oh, like, you're Luke Timm, like the guy that broke all these state records, right?" And I was just living off of that. And then so it was like all that gets taken from me, and it's definitely a freaking shot to the gut. But I always tell people, like, I was always like delusionally optimistic about my situations and always believed in myself to the point where it was like too much, but it also like benefited me a little bit. I feel like my mindset. So I was like, I'm going to make something out of this, even though I was still doing the wrong stuff. Like, I remember getting arrested, the handcuffs on me, being in front, like on the ground in front of like the whole school. Cop takes me up, puts me in the car. I remember sitting in the back, like thinking about how I'm going to make like a documentary of my comeback, you know, like, which didn't happen, but like, that was like,
well, eventually
like, okay,
it did.
Like,
yeah. I mean, like,
eventually, yeah, I guess this is the documentation of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was the same way, dude. I used to watch, I've said this before, I used to watch documentaries of guys who got sober. And I would think like, okay, like, I got a shot. Like, maybe that can be me someday, you know? Like, I really did, and maybe that's the athlete me or whatever. I always love comebacks, even as a kid. Yeah. And there's this, your story, right? AA, or, you know, I'll say AA recovery is the best, some of the best comeback stories of all time. I mean, that's flat out. That's the deal. And you know, you're a walking, living, breathing example of that. When you got into recovery, thank you. When you got into recovery, what did you start to do? Where you really, for me, I was like willing to go to any lengths. What did you do where you were like, wow, this is not something I want to do, but I'm going to do it? And then after you did it, you felt fulfilled.
Yeah, honestly, I liked the meetings. So it was never like, oh man, I got to go to a meeting. I didn't do like the 90 and 90, but I did probably like 3 or 4 a week. Doing the meetings, I like those. I think it was probably, I don't know. I honestly felt like I kind of was like excited to be going through this. I remember like it was just like, okay, I'm committed to this, and I've got like support around me, and it just felt good because like I was getting some outside like assurance essentially from other people, like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Where before it was always like, dude, like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so now I was like moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a
it just
great
felt
great
good.
point to bring that up. That's such a beat down. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
kind of bring it on yourself, right? But people who love you and they're around you, like, what are you doing? And it's constant. So
100%.
there's a lot of drinking and using behind that. For me, it was.
Exactly. And it was like, even like seeing people around town, like, oh, what are you up to? And like, I was very open about it from the jump, because my story was, everybody knew.
Yeah.
It wasn't like,
That does make it
wasn't
easier a
hidden.
little bit when everybody knows. It's like in a
Right.
way, yeah.
That's true. Because like people come up to me like, oh, how are you doing? And like, you knew that they knew, you know? So like, oh, I got nothing to lose. Like telling these people like,
Yeah.
I'm getting my shit together, you know? So I don't really remember like situations where I just remember like not hanging out with the same people anymore. Like I was like, you know, sorry, can't do it. Like I'm sober, can't be around it. That was a little tough, but I was lucky to have like good people in my life that I kind of pushed away before because they weren't involved in the same lifestyle. Like family, like my cousin, he's my roommate in New York City right now. He's the same age as me. I had him to lean on. I had my other buddies who I actually started drinking with, like when I was 12, but they weren't, you know, they didn't take it to like the next level.
Sure.
That I was at, right?
Yeah.
They weren't at that level. And like I was around those next level people, and then I was able to go be around them, tone it down. And like I didn't tell them, like they didn't stop drinking for me, but it was still a lot more stable environment. And like, you know, I don't know. I just embraced it like entirely from the jump.
I've noticed this recently about my own story. You really do find yourself when you're like walking the walk, right? It's like you are surrounded by winners. Like eventually, and then maybe not overnight, and it's hard to make decisions, but like you do wake up one day, and if I think about all the people I'm in contact with, for the most, they're all people that are working towards something, working on themselves. Yes. Some drink, some don't, some smoke weed, some don't. It's not, you know, I have singleness of purpose. I'm not any place I don't need to be, right? But I can go anywhere. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
And I was thinking about that recently. Like it was me and sordid characters in unsavory places, you know, or unsavory characters in 100%. Sordid places, and now it's different like that, you know.
Yeah, it's like now I can go to New York City nightclubs and like, you know, it doesn't even cross my mind. Yeah. But going to the point, like, yeah, like it was like at first it started working out for me. It was like that was something I never did consistently. Like I was always an athlete, but I never like actually hit the weight. So I started doing that and seeing results, and like was surrounded with people that were working out too. So that right there was like the first thing that just led me into like making myself better. And I was like, okay, like if I do this, if I stop this sobriety stuff, like I'm going backwards with my physical health. Like I'll probably stop lifting. Like, I had a lot to lose too. You know, I had Princeton. Like I saw the opportunity to go back, so I was like, I don't want to screw this up.
What were the conditions for you to come back?
I remember I had to do therapy when I first got back. I had to do like a piss test towards the end of it.
So they were like, you got to stay sober.
Yeah, I didn't really know those were the conditions right away. I think that kind of just happened. They didn't say I had to stay sober, but I think it was like the drugs, probably sober. Like they wouldn't know if I was drinking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But luckily I had like a cool therapist that was there. But I just want to go back to like what you're saying about like the people. Like I was lucky to have those great people, right? Like at Princeton, like, I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, but there was so many good people that were there too. Like I had so many good people before that. And somebody reached out to me yesterday on Instagram and was like, hey, like, I'm like, how do I surround myself with people that want to like better themselves? And I'm just like, that's a good question, because like I was lucky to have those people around me. And like, I get emotional with those people. I thank them all the time. I'm like, yo, like you guys were there for me, seriously. But when I think about those people, I'm like, damn, like what would I have done if it was like, I didn't have anybody, like even like in my house, like you never know, like some parents aren't even pushing for their kid, right? Like,
some people have nowhere to go.
Like,
some people don't even know. Some people don't have your football coach that they know, okay, this guy is involved.
100%. Like I was just lucky to have connection, like a recovery community, and also just people that were like good influences. And it's like, Wow, that is a tough question. Like, who am I to like tell people really what to do? Because I did have it. I had it good in that situation. And have a good night. And
Luke's waving to people,
yeah,
leaving his office. Yeah, have a good night.
Exactly.
He's like the chairman of the board in there.
What's this nut doing in here?
So, by the way, you mentioned, being around people and appreciating them, people that stuck with you.
Mm-hmm.
You're clearly a guy that comes from a place of gratitude. How do you stay in that zone?
Good question. I think I stay grateful by like always trying to make progress with myself. Like if I kind of am just sitting around in a slump, like I feel like I wouldn't be able to feel grateful because things aren't moving in the right direction. Like I kind of have to always be constantly working on something, and just thinking like, looking back, retrospect, right? Like where I was, where I've come. I think just like doing the things that I've been doing, like you get those outside affirmations from other people, and then it's like, okay, like, wow, I really have come far. Like people are recognizing this, and that's huge. Not that you need that, but that
No, but
certainly
sometimes
helps.
you're the last one to see it. Even
Exactly,
your progress,
exactly.
and that's why. Are you still involved with recovery meetings and stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I have a meeting right down the street that I like to go to.
Awesome.
And
then a new kid comes in, or a new man or woman or whoever, and you see that change in them. And for me, I'm like, oh yeah, like I guess that's happening with me or happened with me,
Exactly. You totally forget it. And it's like at the place I'm at, I feel like I've elevated myself so much now. It's so even like think about where I was before. It's like so far away. Like so many steps have happened since then. It's like I have to sit back sometimes like, oh wow, like I did come pretty far. And it's like, oh, it's only been 4.5 years, like 4 years, 9 months. It's like, how much more can I do? Because I'm always constantly like pushing myself like with my goals and like where I want to be.
So one thing I know people are going to want the answer to this question because you're in New York, in the city, you got it going on, and you're still going out, because you're young. How old are you?
24.
That's 24-year-old people go to clubs in New York City when they live in New York City. How are you? When I was 24 and I lived in New York, I would go and do coke all night, but I didn't get sober until I was in my early 30s.
Early 30s? Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's when I got sober. Yeah. So when you go out, like how do you do that? Like how do you maintain that spiritual fitness that enables you to go out? Because I said we can go wherever we want, and having that social connectivity is part of being a young man, like looking for connection, right? So how do you manage that?
A couple things. I think one, the people are important. So I'm just around people that like genuinely care about my sobriety. None of them are sober. Like some of them drink casually, some of them do drugs. But I've actually managed to like be good friends with all these people. And they're just like supportive of my sobriety. And like if I ever did anything to jeopardize that, they'd be like in shambles. So I think that the people is important. But I also think just like having something that's bigger than alcohol in my life. Like I just have something like a vision of like where my future is. And that is like so much bigger than like what drinking and alcohol is. And like, I even see where I am with my peers, like people I went to Princeton. I'm like, I'm ahead of these dudes. Like it used to be like, I was the guy on the bottom of the barrel. And now it's like, oh, like I'm that guy. Like, I feel like I'm that guy and I know where I'm going to be. Like people might not see my vision, but I have a perfect like whole view of it. And I know exactly where it's going to take me. And I'm like, that wouldn't be possible if I was drinking and doing that stuff. So I think it's like having something bigger than having something bigger than drinking.
Yeah, you have your dreams and you're also making great progress in your reality, right? Like
exactly.
what is your vision? What's Luke Timm doing in 10 years? I mean, or what is that ultimate success story? I mean, a lot of times we can't, in sobriety, we don't want to become attached to the outcome, but at the same time,
it's a process, right?
Yeah, but there's ambition too. For me, I have ambition. So what
I set
is
my
that
goals, vision? It's always like I want to focus on a process, like New Year's resolution, right? I want it to be like process focused. Like I was saying, the reactivity to certain things, like that's process oriented. It's not a certain goal. like a physical, tangible goal. But I want to be a leader in the recovery space. I'm looking to open recovery centers eventually. So I'll tell you our little plan. So my cousin is a mental health advocate. He did stuff. He had like a big mental health breakdown right after college. He was like a straight A student. You know, he's just a stud, like 6'5" dude.
Oh God, you guys were trouble. So and this is your roommate.
Yeah, we're trouble. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's my roommate, but he went through some mental health stuff and came out on the other side, and he started doing stuff with that. He was doing speeches, and like we collabed a little bit before, but now we're like going to start working together. And so our goal for this year, we want to do 10 speeches by 6/31. So like want to speak at like, you know, big like universities like NYU, Princeton, places like that. So we're setting those up. We're like just finishing up our website and everything behind the scenes, setting up the LLC, you know, like whatever. But we're doing a bunch of crazy stuff as well. So with these speeches, we're giving a takeaway that we want everyone to have something to take away. It's not just like, okay, we're here to talk about mental health struggle and alcohol and addiction struggle. Like that's just a little piece of it. But we want to give everybody a takeaway, because not everybody that's going to be there is going to relate to having some sort of substance or mental health issue, right? So we're like, how can we give something to everybody that's there? And so like we wanted to create, like we look at ourselves like informational brokers. Like we don't take any credit for the ideas that we have. We're not like, we created this formula. It's like, no, like we read into a lot of this, you know, into this type of stuff, and like we've lived it. So like an easy way for us to create change is like just having this 4-step word process: what, why, how, when. It's like, what is the awareness? Why is the purpose behind it? How is the process? Taking it from the biggest macro, like the end goal, the vision, breaking it down all the way to the micro level of like, what am I going to do to first start like on a daily basis?
Yeah.
And then the when, which is like now, like use this moment as a time to like push yourself to make a better self in the future. And so like we're taking that into our speeches.
That's awesome.
And we're going to be doing some cool skits and whatnot. You can, you know, make it entertaining, because I like to.
You have that like entertainment funny bone kind of in your running through you.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I feel like I can bring that out even more, because it's like we're talking about something serious. So it's like sometimes you get so into it, but it's like
yeah.
You know, like I'm a clown 24/7. Like that's all I do.
Do you ever think about doing stand up or anything?
Yeah. I think like, you know, who knows where life's gonna take me. But I'm like, you know, if I do the speaking stuff, and like, why not just hop on a stage and like, you know, tell jokes about myself, make fun of myself, you know? Like,
dude, when I got sober, I lived in Jersey City, and I was out of my mind when I got out of treatment. I thought I was going to be a stand-up comedian. So I was sober, going to a shitload of meetings in the city, and I would go to this place, Stand Up New York, at like 5 o'clock. It was like open mic, and it would be nobody there but like 5 or 6 other comedians who were just looking to like work their stuff out. And dude, when I tell you, it was I look back, I couldn't do it today, but I was so involved in the program then that I was like, I'm going to do it. And I would go through, and I wasn't fucking any good, you know, but I did it. It was
I'm surprised. I feel like you could have done it.
Well, maybe, you know, who knows? But no, it was like there was nobody there. And honestly, here's the thing. I know
similar space that you're in right now.
Yeah. But I didn't have, I don't know. It was so hard to do, and doing it was such an accomplishment and an esteemable act that only happens in sobriety. Like your thing going up there and doing skits with your cousin. I mean, that's kind of where this thing takes us. We're able to tap into these God-given skills, right? Because we all have, you know, I don't know. I just see people around me that have gotten sober tap into their gifts, whatever they are. And I think we all have them once we kind of dust off, you know, all the shit that we, you know, all that compiled on us when we were drinking, and you're using those gifts now, you know?
100%. Yeah. Everybody has skills. I mean, there's people on the scale that are more talented than others, you could say objectively, but everybody has stuff that they're better at and things that they can work on to get better at. So it's like, once you start the sobriety thing, it's like, I think the best way to stay sober is by creating progress in your life, you know, physically, mentally, spiritually.
Yeah.
If you're not progressing, it's almost like regressing. So I think it's like when you see people that have long-term recovery, it's because like they're making progress in all these different areas of their life. And that's why all these skills, they shine, because it's like they've been working on it this whole entire period. It's like, okay, like instead of getting messed up on a Tuesday night, like, okay, I'll start like I'll keep learning the piano, or I'll like,
Yeah.
work on my stand up, or I'll work on my new business venture.
Yeah. Let me ask you
And it
something.
just translates.
It's before I let you out of here, I got a couple more things for you. When you
Mm-hmm.
like, you're young and you're sober, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, do people call you to like get through to younger guys? And what's your message
Yeah.
to them? Like the guy that was an athlete that's like, forget this, dude. I'm not, this isn't for me. Like, what is your message or your elevator pitch on a better life? Now, you don't, you're not looking to accomplish anything really, because you're just sharing your story. But what do you say?
Yeah, like I told him, I'm like, look, there's nothing in it for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I guess at the end of the day, it makes me feel good when I'm helping other people, but I'm not gaining anything externally. But I think it's just trying to sell the lifestyle as a whole, and just saying, like, instead of looking at it like, oh, all the fun that I was having is going to be gone. It's like you create all this fun, all this hope, all this progress towards a better you that, like, over time, it's so satisfying. I mean, it's satisfying on a day-to-day basis, but like when you look back, it's like, it's hard to even imagine going back at this point. Like, that's why my sobriety is so stable. But I'm just like, dude, look where I was. Like, I mean, I can show them newspaper articles, I can show them whatever. Like, this is my story. Like, my story is your story. Like, it may not have the same exact details, may not have the same writing on paper, but there are so many things that are linked between what you're struggling with and what I'm struggling with. And it's like, and now I'm here. It's like, and I have the results to show for it, right? So it's like, I was almost ruined my college opportunity. I was able to graduate, do well in school, and then, get a good job in New York City, excel in my career, progress really fast in that, start building something with sobriety through social media, and then tell them about like my plans, like with the brand that I'm creating, the public speaking brand, and all these other things. It's like, okay, so you go from somebody who wanted to sit on the couch all day and was like just waiting until like that thing was finished to be able to go use, to all of a sudden somebody who's like just enjoying the process, enjoying the little things. And it's like, I feel like that is satisfying to people who are like, even if they don't want to do it themselves, like, I feel like everybody deep down a little bit is like a little bit sick and tired. Like, they know something's a little off, and it's like, okay, like, I just tell them, like, why don't you just try this thing for like a day? Like, let's just talk every day. Like, tomorrow, like, we'll talk, like, just try to stay sober tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow. And like, I'll try to work them through it that way. And it's like, they get through a week and they're like, oh, I actually feel like good now. Like, I still have little cravings or whatever, and they start to see that movement. But I tell them, I'm like, look, you're not going to all of a sudden become like the most productive human being in the world. Like, it takes some time. I wasn't all of a sudden like, okay, now I'm gonna work out at 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. I work on my career. It was like, no, it was like a process of like me getting to that point. But like, you'll start to enjoy that process more, get used to it more. Cause some people are like, oh man, it's just tough. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's like, you gotta believe in like what I'm saying, and believe in yourself that like, if you just keep pushing through, like, you're going to have small little breakthroughs, and you're going to start seeing the light on the other side. It's like, oh, this is actually like working out and like making me happy. And, I have something to strive for.
What do you tell people that say, I can't have fun anymore without drinking or using? Because that's what kept me out for so long.
Yeah. I just tell them it's false. I'm going to tell them, hey, you're not going to get the same pleasure out of that stuff. Like, I don't go out like on a Friday and Saturday night and like have probably as fun as I would have, honestly, like, because like, I mean, it's like, why do people drink?
Totally.
Like, okay, like, people drink because like you want to get fucked up and like lose thought of like everything else, like lose awareness of everything that's going around. Like, it does make you more in the moment, like when you're partying and stuff. Like, people drink for a reason. It's not like people drink and like it's so awful. Like, there's some sort of relief and like pleasure to
Totally.
it. So like, especially in that environment, like, I'm probably not going to get as much pleasure out of like going to the bars as I would have before. But I just can channel that in so many other different areas of my life. And it's like, I'm having fun and making progress. Like, I'm making myself better and having fun and like enjoying the little things on a day-to-day basis, instead of like hating Monday through Friday and then like living it up on Friday and Saturday. It's like, okay, now I'm Sunday to Sunday. I'm like, okay, I'm like, it's steady. Everything's good. And like, it's constant, just like progress and feeling good about myself.
That progress and those moments of fulfillment. I mean, I mean, people can believe it or not. It's for me, it's better than getting high, because I really feel like a little bit of euphoria. Now, it doesn't last all the time. Life is hard. But like, I I wish I could just share what I feel when I'm in a rhythm and sobriety to folks who don't think they can ever get. I mean, it's hard at the beginning, right? Like I didn't rocket into the fourth dimension, a month sober, or even a year. I was still banging into stuff, and I'm still banging into shit today. But it's like 100%. It really is, man. It's a great way of life, and that's why I love to have. I mean, that's why I'm talking to you, is because I want people to see that there is a great life, a fun life, an enjoyable life on the other side of, having a bow and arrow shot through your house and getting arrested, right? I mean, like, and being at odds with you're not supposed to fight with your mom all the fucking time. You know what I mean? Right. You're just not. And if she's different than you, you're in a position now to find a way to connect, right? It's a beautiful 100%. Thing what you're doing, dude. Anything else you want to say or plug? I'll put this up next Tuesday and I'll share it with you. But anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to just continue on kind of what I was talking about with the speeches and whatnot. So like,
let's go.
We're creating this brand. It's called Touch Streets, or it's like basically a public speaking brand. But we're also literally bringing it to the streets. So we're going to be, my cousin and I decided we're going to be working out in the streets of New York City instead of going to our gym. So we go to like Equinox, like a $300 a month gym, bougie, it's got all the toys, it's got the chicks, all that stuff. And I'm like, but I've been I want to start working on the streets either way, but I'm like, dude, like the only way like we're really going to commit to that hardcore is like we actually just cancel the membership. So like we're canceling our memberships. We're working on the streets of New York City. And we're also like once a week, we're going to be going into the streets of New York City with a chair and a sign basically telling people to come up to us. And just the signs would be like, if you want to create some sort of change in your life, come see us. And then we're going to basically run people through the what, when, how, why with a Google form. And we'll walk them through it, helping them to just get to think about like being aware of like what they want to change. They might know that already. And then like breaking down why, getting it through. And then at the end, they're going to sit down in the chair and we want them to manifest this thing occurring and like, or, this habit being ingrained. But also thinking about like the moments that are kind of come along with the process. And like they say, like when you want to like manifest stuff or like have a vision of things, like you actually, instead of thinking about like, oh man, when I have all the shiny cars in the house, like it's gonna be great. It's like, you think about like the tough moments of going through that process and then you succeeding through those moments. Like the time I'm on stage at a school and all of a sudden I totally blank and I'm like, where am I? But then I'm able to like collect myself and still like do well, so like trying to get them to think about like, hey, like change is not easy, right? Like there's gonna be tough moments.
Failure happens.
Thinking about, failure is going to happen, but you can like push through those moments and come out on the other side and make yourself better. And so they're going to fill out that whole form. It's going to get sent to us. We're having our buddy code a thing where, so then they're going to sit in the chair, manifest it, and then we're going to take a picture of them. That's going to get put on the form. It's going to get sent to us. And immediately they're going to get something sent back to them. That's like a little background of what, why, how, when. And then the picture of them, it's going to be like the opacity is going to be like 20-25%. So it's kind of like a little bit in the background of them sitting in the chair. So they'll be able to see the moment. They're going to be able to see exactly what they were thinking in that moment. And they're going to have the process right out.
How long does this take, you think?
I think it's going to take like 5-10 minutes for a person. That's our goal, is to like, try to help. We want to help as many people as possible. We want to be as thorough as possible. So who knows? You know what I mean? At the beginning,
dude, it's an awesome idea.
So, we'll probably be out in the streets like 5 days a week. I mean, I work out 6 days a week, so I'm sure it's going to be, I have like this, I bought this portable pull-up. I'm going to see if I can pull up a video. I got a video right here. It's a portable pull-up and dip bar. And it like breaks down into like a bag and like a base. And they're like 40 pounds each. So it's big and hefty, but like you can put it up anywhere. So we're put it up in Times Square, Union Square, all these different places. Yeah, like I'm like, dude, like we might as well get as many eyes as we can on each other as possible. So like this is literally me in the office that I'm in right now. I set up this box. So this is the pull-up bar, me doing pull-ups on it.
You guys got to see this. Luke is doing pull-ups right now. We will have the video of this.
Pull-ups. Yeah. You don't have the video yet.
That thing's pretty awesome. Pull-ups. No, we will have video. Yeah.
Oh, it's sick. Yeah. All right, sweet. Yeah. So I mean, nice little $600 toy, but that's gonna be able to use out in the street. I got some TRX bands. I don't know if you know what those are. Yeah. We'll get some resistance bands. So we're gonna make it work. And then just trying to get people involved in the working out, like we're on the streets. and I do like the media stuff. So I'm kind of trying to think about how I want to adapt my content to make it a little bit, make the process a little bit faster on my end. I'm outsourcing a little bit of the editing now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing things in one take instead of like breaking down my talks. It's just going to be one take, outsource, have that person do the captions and like, you know, like the new trendy captions that they put on.
Yeah.
And outsourcing that so I can focus a little more on that content. And so our goal with that though is like, we're not asking people to like, hey, buy this, buy that. Like we're gonna have some merch. Like we got a cool logo and everything. I could pull up, but
you got to send me the logo.
We're trying. Yeah, I'll send it to you. This is the logo right here. And we're like picking
Touch
red.
Streets.
Like most,
oh,
like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, most like GoFundMe's, they're like, oh, you know, nice green. Like we're like, no, we're trying to be edgy. Like,
yeah,
you know, really something different. And our goal is to raise $3 million by the end of this year, which some people might be like, that's fucking nuts. And like, excuse me, but like it is nuts.
Ahead.
Like, you know, like most people would be like, that's insane. But like what I've been doing in the background and stuff is like networking with people with these recovery centers. And so now I understand how the operations of these centers work. And that's like, we want to raise the money to open one within Manhattan for a youth that are like going through it, like teens and up until young adults. But we're not calling it a recovery center. We want to create a concept where it's called an elevation center.
Okay.
Oh, wow. And the lights went out in my office. That's how you know you've been there for a long time.
Look at this.
You see me now? And so, with this elevation center, right? Like recovery.
By the way, but what you just did was smooth. The lights go out on this guy. He doesn't panic or anything. He just hits a button on his computer and we got light. That is what you're trying to convey to these people. How are things going when they're not going well or when they're not going as planned? And like, it's like, what do? You know what I mean? Like, great move. That's
100%. I appreciate
that. You're walking it, dude. You're walking.
Yeah. So, I'm walking it, and I've just been like, I'm doing so much stuff in the background that people don't even realize it's going on, like business-wise within the community. That is like, you know, we're gonna like pitch to investors and like try to raise money to like open these centers. But basically, like, I've seen these recovery centers in action. I think they're great. They're basically like a stepping stone between like a rehab center and going into the real world, kind of like a halfway house, but a little more upscale.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're not paid by insurance, so it is out of pocket.
Yeah.
It's a higher end demographic, I would say. So like Manhattan's a good place to do that because, you know, economically, the market is there.
I mean, I know a couple dudes who run facilities like you're talking about, and there's there's success to be had there. Like what you're saying totally makes sense to me.
100%. So like we're starting there. We're creating these elevation centers where the younger audience, it's a little demographic because for the older guys that I've seen in these centers, it's usually not the financials that is like something that's a problem with them. It's like they can make money in their sleep, slugging it back. It's more so like, oh, their family's in shambles, like all this, you know, mentally they're in shambles. Like their mindsets are good when it comes to like being a professional and like working hard, but it's like the drinking just gets in the way in other ways. But like with the youth, it's, I think, a way of approaching it is like, they don't really have, a lot of them don't have that mindset to where they can like,
they know how to make money.
They know how to make money. They know how to make progress in their lives, right? It's not even just like, we want to give them skills to make money, but we also want to give them skills to like, just to have hobbies to work on when they're out. Like find passions, right? Because if you have a passion, you have purpose, it's going to keep you, you have a better chance staying away from a drink or a drug than if you don't. So it's like, this is an elevation center. We're going to have like, you know, basically like a whole curriculum set up where it's like, oh, like an hour a day of like learning about mindset, like growth mindset. Because I think growth mindset's huge. People don't realize that the brain is a muscle like any other brain. It's like you can grow it by using it on a day-to-day basis. Teaching them about growth mindset, teaching them different skills, whether that's like helping, like tutoring them with like, you know, financial exams if they wanted to do something or down that course, or like they want to learn about a new trade, like maybe they want to go into plumbing or like whatever, you know, like helping them get on the right path to like learning about that. And then also like doing hands-on stuff like woodworking. Like that's how that was my cousin's outlet. Like he made chairs. It was called No Man Sits Alone. He would make chairs and sell them to raise the money to do the things that he was doing. And so like woodworking was his outlet. So like helping people find an outlet in that way, like music, just instead of it being like, you know, school where it's like, okay, like you have to learn history, you have to learn math, you have to learn this. It's like all the stuff they don't teach you. It's like, you know, it's
all
like
the stuff they give us, give us Adderall because we won't sit still, or we won't, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people who have that gene and that like left brain or whatever you want to call it, that they really don't get a chance to tap into it because it's not a part of the curriculum. You have music class
100%.
or film or whatever, but it's not embedded, you know, and a lot of addicts
so if we're just like, we
that.
build these people's mindsets up,
yeah,
they're going to be able to be successful in whatever they do, because it's like it's not about like having the perfect tools in the beginning. It's about knowing how to like have some sort of like initiative, like being able to create some sort of initiative with whatever you're working with, and being able to build on that to create the skills that you want, right? It's like finding the tools and like creating the skill that you need. So we just want people to help people become resourceful and like build ingrained habits that are positive, that are going to build them up. So that's like our 1 year goal. And then looking out into the year 2028, we set all these dates. We actually created a manifest page on our website. It's not a goal page because it's like,
is the site up? Is the site up?
It's not up 100% because we still have to, we're linking one more thing, but basically it's almost, I'll set forward you everything when it's done.
Yeah.
But we had a goals page with the timeline, and I was like, no, it should be like a manifest page. Like this already happened in our minds. Like instead of being like, oh, like let's hope this happens, it's like, no, like this already happened to us. Like, so like we set the dates. We're like on 12/31/2023, we raised the $3 million. Like that's our goal.
Yeah.
And then we call it the $100 million project. Our goal by the year 2028, 12/31/2028, is to have $100 million raised to have a self-sufficient recovery, like a growth center. We don't like the word recovery because it's like, all right, get back to where you are. We like elevation because it's like you're going to somewhere you never.
Dude, Thomas Henderson, the guy who used to play for the Cowboys in the NFL, I saw him speak once. He's been on the podcast, but he said, you know, they call it rehabilitation, like you had something going in the first place. You know what I mean? He's like, it's not like, you know what I mean? And so that's pretty cool. How you're calling it like an elevate. You're putting somebody, you know, you're helping them spread their wings.
Exactly. And like, that's the one we want to be self-sufficient, right? So it's like, we're raising $100 million. It's not going to go all towards the facility, but we want to basically have enough money in reserves that the revenue that's created through like the investments that it has, like, you know, maybe we'll partner with like a BlackRock or like, you know, that's eventual goal is like go with like some sort of big, like,
dude, and you can go into these businesses,
money, a hedge fund.
Yeah, dude,
right,
there's a lot
create
there.
Enough recurring revenue that it covers all the expenses of the facility itself, so that anybody from any demographic could come to this place instead of it being like, okay, like you have to have money, because like that's going to be our model in the first one that we open. Like, you know, sad to say, like these things cost money, and it's like, you know, that opens up opportunities for people that do have it, but like makes it tougher for people that aren't, you know, socially, economically in that upper class. So like we recognize that, and we don't want that to be a barrier to be successful with recovery and mental health and all this stuff. So it's like, if we created a center, we raise this money, like that'll eventually be starting a non-for-profit, and to have a fund that could just put cash into this facility every single year so that nobody had to pay. Like that is the ultimate goal. So it's like, we already know what our goal is this year, to raise the money for our facility that's going to be like for profit, like we're going to own it, but eventually like we want a self-sufficient place for anybody to come. 2028.
Dude, I love it. I love it. Thanks, dude. Thank you so much for your time. Send me the information on the site. I'll put this up next Tuesday, 100%. And then when you really get get up and running, I'll rerun it again. So
for sure, it should be. I would say, you know, we're just working on the final little touches, but we should be out in the streets within like a week or two. Like,
really?
Working out in the streets, hardcore. So
okay.
And I'm a nut. Like I'm a nut. On the
I can tell. You're the good kind of nut. Yeah.
People might be like get away from me, or like some people are gonna love it. Like I'm gonna be getting them down, throwing push-ups on with me, and getting them all hyped up, and hopefully just like inspiring other people to change and like spread the message. Because I'm just like, my quote, the quote that I think I created, I'm not sure. I thought about it one day, that like helped me reframe things in my head. Extreme results require extreme actions. And like when I talk about extreme, I use two definitions, or like it has two meanings. One, it means like doing crazy things. Like, if you do like things that are out there that other people are just scared to do, like that's going to help you set yourself out from others and like get you noticed. And then also, like, what is extreme in other people's mind is like doing things on a day-to-day basis that people don't like to do, like that discipline, right? Like that's extreme to other people. So it's like being extreme with the discipline, being extreme with like actually doing nuts things. Like we're working out in the middle of New York City it's coming, like there's a foot of snow on the ground and we're still out here working out, like recording, putting stuff out, getting people to try to come up to us, getting them to create change in their lives, and like hopefully being able to spread that message, you know? So we're just trying to like blow this thing up, you know what I mean? And just create like a global impact. Like that's the goal. We're just going to focus on the process. We're going to do what we can control, but I don't see why it wouldn't, you know, go to that level. If we're stick to our word and do it, which I 100% know we're going to do. It's like, some people might be like, yo, you're not going to do that. Like, oh, like
I'm going to do it
right now. Like,
yeah.
It's going to happen. Like it's literally like 2 weeks away. So you'll see. It's like, if we do that, it's like, how can it not work? You know, it's crazy. It's so crazy. How can it not work?
It's called Touch Streets, right?
Touch Streets.
And you are going to touch and impact a lot of people. You already have today. And whatever I can do to help you keep it going, just shoot me your info. After this, send me the link or whatever, and you let me know when I can, like, you know, when it's live or whatever.
100%. Let's do it. And I'd love to get back on here, you know, sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe next year. What is it? It's 110. I mean, if we did one a year from now, we could do it before. I mean, I had a great time on here, so I'd love to come back on and
I'll have you back.
Reassess, see where things are going, and this is awesome. I appreciate what you're doing, because there's not a lot of people that, you know, you're doing. I love the broadcasting and stuff. That stuff's awesome, man. Like, you're living the dream, and you're also able to share like what you're doing as well. And it's like, I feel privileged in the same sense where I have like a very good 9 to 5, like in New York City, like able to support myself, make really good money, and be open about this stuff. You know, and I think that's huge, dude. Goes to show how far society's come and how open people are about it now. But it's like,
dude, you're sitting there in a conference room wherever you work on 42nd and Park, and people, you're sharing your story of sobriety. Everybody's waving, hey, see you later.
Oh yeah, people know. You know, I go out to my broker lunches and I'm like, yo, I'm sober. Like,
where do you work? Can you say where you work?
Yeah, so it's called Tradesman Program Managers. Okay. It's called an MGA, so Managing General Agency.
Okay.
Where we do an underwriting for like a big insurance company. We focus on contractors in New York City. So like all the guys that are building the skyscrapers, doing the roads, we do their general liability insurance. So like anybody gets hurt on the job site, slip and fall, trip, you know, whatever, something comes down on them, third party employees, we're covering those claims. And so I'm an underwriter. So basically like those accounts come in, the different contractors, and I have to assess like, okay, how do I think this fits? Like, do I think this fits within our risk appetite? Like, which is like the certain criteria that the account needs to meet for like its sales, its loss history, like just diving deep into that and seeing if it's a good fit, and then trying to price it up and get it out there. So that's like the financial side of things that I do. And I think like that stuff will have carryover.
Yeah, when you merge them together, dude, that's
exactly when I like sort of the facilities, like, okay, I have some background in finance. So it's not like this guy's just like a recovery hopeful, like, all right, I just want to open this center and like, let's see where it goes. Like, I can back it up with the numbers and like a whole business plan, and like, and with some sort of like experience behind that. And hopefully I can bring like people that are in this industry that I know, this industry and like the other industries within the finance world that I've gotten to network with, because in New York City, it's like the recovery, it's pretty cool. Like you'll see some famous people, like you're constantly with people like multimillionaires that are like CEOs of companies.
It's amazing
like,
who you will see in those meetings, who you like rub elbows with. Yeah. I used to go to that place called the, God, what the hell is it called? It's on 37th between Park and Lex. It's the basement. I used to go there anyways.
Is it Monday Men's?
No. It's called like, God, I forget. I'm going to remember it and be pissed. But anyways, it's just an awesome meeting. You go down this basement and you'll see, who knows? You know, it's like a clubhouse. And it's called, I forget. But it's the best game in town. It says it on the wall. You know, this is the best, and it is. All right, we got to wrap up. There's other people waiting to get in here. Dude, Luke, you are the man, dude. I appreciate
that's you, seriously. I appreciate you having me on. Look forward to talking soon.
Yeah.
We'll definitely stay in touch.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.